"No one can silence me," said the millionaire. But the employee revealed an incredible truth. Jack stood in the assembly line. The rhythmic clatter of machines felt like a heartbeat of the town he loved. The factory, a hub of community and pride, was more than just a place of work, it was family. As a single father, he often thought, "This is for Ethan." But now, with Richard on board, everything felt different. The air was thick with anxiety, a palpable force, as whispers warned of layoffs. Jack's heart sank as he saw the worry in his co-workers' eyes. Friends who had labored side by side for years. Richard strode into the factory, his cold gaze shattering their camaraderie. He dressed like he belonged in Wall Street, not their small town, and carried an air of arrogance that provoked a collective unease. "Profit over people," a voice muttered in the crowd, and Jack's stomach twisted. He needed this job, Ethan depended on him. But what about those countless nights spent laughing and sharing stories with his fellow workers? Shouldn't they fight for what they built together? The town hall meeting loomed, an opportunity to take a stand. Jack could already see himself stepping forward, voice strong against the backdrop of fear. Would he speak up for his friends, though? Would Richard smirk, belittling him in front of everyone? Jack had seen that sneer before. It made the tightness in his chest worsen. "Dad, are you going to the meeting?" Ethan's bright eyes looked up at him, innocent and trusting. "You'll make it right, won't you?" Jack swallowed hard, unsure if he could uphold the weight of those expectations. Before Jack could respond, news broke about Richard's past, a slip of the tongue from an old acquaintance at the diner, hidden away from prying eyes. The rich man had fallen from grace, left behind by the disdain of his own family after exploiting workers just like Jack. Suddenly, this wasn't just a fight about a factory, it was personal. Fueled with determination, Jack remembered his father's lesson: standing up for what is right was a legacy, not a burden. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the night of the town hall approached, tension buzzed through the factory. Jack's hands trembled as he thought of the impending confrontation. Would revealing this truth empower his co-workers, or would it deepen the discord? He imagined walking into that room, heart pounding, as whispers and gasps erupted when he dropped the bombshell about Richard. The day of the meeting arrived, and the factory buzzed like a shaken soda can. Faces reflected anxiety and anticipation. Jack found Ethan in the corner of the room, eyes wide with pride. This was his father's moment, but could he do it? Just as Jack felt the rising tide of adrenaline, he stepped forward to reveal the hidden truth. Silence enveloped the crowd, holding its breath. In that moment, Jack couldn't help but wonder, could his voice be powerful enough to ignite a fire of change, or would the shadows of fear snuff it out? Jack took a deep breath, steadying himself as he stepped into the bright lights of the town hall. Unsure voices murmured around him, but he pushed past the noise, focusing on the faces of his friends and neighbors. Their expressions were a blend of hope and fear, a mirror of his own heart. "Why are we here?" Richard's voice sliced through the crowd like glass shattering. He leaned back against the podium, appearing unbothered. The wall of aloofness he had built around himself loomed as a barrier. Jack had to push through it, not just for himself, but for everyone who depended on this factory. Slowly, he raised his hand, silence thickening in the room as all eyes turned toward him. "Because we're tired," Jack said, his voice shaking but firm. "Tired of living in fear of layoffs, tired of worrying about our families. This factory is our home, and we deserve more than just numbers on a spreadsheet." He felt the weight of Ethan's gaze on him, the trust shining in his child's bright eyes sparking a fire within him. Richard scoffed, his brow furrowing in disdain. "You think sentiment will save you? This is business, not a charity." But the truth burned brighter. It's personal, Richard. You don't understand what this place means to us, Jack countered, stroking the emotional chords of their shared struggles. We aren't just workers, we're families. Brothers and sisters in this community. And we know about your past. Gasps resonated through the crowd. Richard's expression faltered for a split second, just long enough for Jack to see the flicker of vulnerability. It was a crack in the armor, a glimpse that perhaps this was more than a business transaction for Richard after all. Jack pressed on, you think we'll let our lives be dismantled without a fight? You're here to stir up profit, but you've messed with the wrong group. We've worked too hard and sacrificed too much. At that moment, something shifted in the audience. A voice rang out from the back, a familiar voice. It was Sarah, a woman who'd been with the factory for over 2 decades. Yes, right. She shouted, her fists clenched. We deserve a fair wage, respect, and a chance to thrive. Not to feel like pawns in someone else's game. The crowd erupted in agreement. Heads nodded, hands clapped. Jack felt the weight of conviction swelling around him, drawing others into the light of this shared truth. The fear that once paralyzed him now transformed into a collective power. Richard stepped forward, an attempt to regain control. You're making a mistake. This is not how this will end. You are all replaceable. But his words fell flat, echoing against the newfound resolve filling the hall. Jack's heart raced, adrenaline coursing through him as he caught Ethan's eye, a piercing look that demanded everything of him. Yes, we are replaceable, but we are not without value. Our stories matter, our efforts matter. Jack shouted, the fire now roaring within him. What you don't understand is that we are stronger together. You may try to push us down, but we'll rise. We'll fight for our families. With those words, Jack realized the battle had only just begun. The atmosphere shifted, it ignited a spark that could no longer be dimmed. But what would happen next? Would they stand united against Richard's threats, or would fear drive them back into silence? The room held its breath, waiting for the next move. Jack braced himself for the inevitable clash looming ahead, knowing that whatever happened, he'd fight for every last person in that room. But one question lingered in his heart: could truth and bravery prevail against the relentless darkness of corporate greed? Jack could feel the tension thickening in the hall, an electric charge that both frightened and exhilarated him. He stood there, heart pounding, surveying the faces of his community. They all looked back at him, eyes wide with a mix of fear and fierce determination. It was a moment that demanded action, a moment when courage could shift everything. Listen, everyone, he continued, the words tumbling from his mouth fueled by a mix of hope and defiance. We're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for our future. Our children's future. They deserve to grow up in a world where hard work is rewarded, not crushed under greed. The room erupted again, a chorus of voices echoing his sentiment. People stood taller, shoulders back, strengthened by his words. Jack felt as if a dam had burst, spilling confidence and unity where fear had once taken hold. Richard's eyes darted around the hall, scanning for dissent, but all he found was solidarity. You think this is the end? This is just the beginning, he sneered, trying to regain his authority. You're making a big mistake if you think I'll back down. Maybe it's you who doesn't understand, Sarah shouted back, stepping into the space where Richard's bravado used to hold sway. We're stronger than your money and threats. You can't buy our resilience. The crowd roared in approval, a wave of shared strength flooding the hall. Jack watched as fists pumped in the air, a show of unity and unwavering spirit. It dawned on him that they weren't just fighting for the factory or their jobs, they were fighting for dignity, respect, a voice in a world that often silenced them. Richard, you may have deep pockets, but we have something money can't buy: community and heart. Jack challenged, stepping forward, channeling the collective energy buzzing through the crowd. Richard scoffed, but Jack saw a crack in his veneer of confidence. The man's gaze flickered, uncertainty creeping in. You think you can win just by yelling louder? Sometimes, that's how battles begin, Jack replied, his voice echoing with the raw truth of their struggle. A hush descended, followed by whispers swirling like a breeze through the audience. Jack sensed the stakes rising, the moment teetering on a precipice. He took a deep breath, letting the weight of his words resonate. Everyone here believes in something greater than yourselves. We're not just numbers to be shuffled around. We're flesh, blood and dreams. As Jack finished, a strange chant began to rise in the hall, our lives. Our choice. Together we will raise our voice. Ethan stood in the front, his small fists lifted eagerly with the crowd, a fiery glimmer shining in his eyes. In that moment, Jack felt the tears brimming. This was more than just about the factory, it was about breaking the chains that kept them silent. It was about proving that they mattered, but then, Richard's expression turned cold, his demeanor shifting from uncertainty to ominous calm. If you want to play this game, so be it. But remember, you're risking everything you hold dear, he warned, an unsettling threat woven into his tone. Jack's heart sank momentarily, but he couldn't let fear dim the fire that had ignited. We've already lost too much to keep quiet now. He shouted back, determination propelling his words higher. The crowd erupted once more, their voices rising into a chant of defiance. But as the echoes faded, Jack felt a knot of anxiety tighten in his chest. What would come of this stand? Would Richard strike back, and how hard would he hit? A stillness descended as everyone waited for the next play. Jack could see it in their eyes, his community vulnerable and strong, but unsure of what lay ahead. And as Richard's lips curled into a knowing smile, Jack's heart raced. What was he planning? The moment of truth was near, and everything hinged on how far they would go to protect their lives, their dreams. Would courage prevail, or would they succumb to the very fear they fought against? There was a palpable pause as Jack stared at Richard, feeling the weight of the moment. Uncertainty churned in his gut. He took a step back, surveying the crowd. Faces were set, brows furrowed with a mix of determination and worry. Could they handle whatever Richard was planning? Richard raised his hands, silencing the crowd. Your unity means nothing if you don't have the guts to follow through, he retorted, his voice dripping with contempt. You think you intimidate me? I've faced bigger challenges than a bunch of disgruntled workers. Jack inhaled deeply, moments from feeling his resolve fracture under pressure. But he wouldn't let that happen, not now. It doesn't matter how big you think you are, Richard. You're not above the people of this town. His voice rang out, bold and clear, and the room exploded with energy once more. Yet, as Jack spoke, he sensed the surreal nature of their reality. They were indeed against a giant, but it was a giant made of money and power, a giant that didn't see them as people. Just then, a low murmuring started from the back of the hall. Jack turned to see Martha, a longtime employee and mother of 3, shuffling towards the front. She looked small compared to Richard, yet there was a fierceness in her eyes. Jack, she called, hesitating slightly before continuing, can I say something? Jack nodded, grateful for her courage. Of course, Martha. Please. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. Richard, your threats don't scare us anymore. You think you can control us with your power, but let me remind you of something you seem to forget. A hush fell as everyone leaned in closer. What you don't see, she continued, her voice trembling but solid, is that we are not powerless because of your money. The real power is in the hands of every person in this room. Each of us has a story, a reason for standing together. Her words struck deep. Jack could feel the murmuring grow stronger, hope lighting the faces of those around him. The spirit of defiance was rekindling. And while you sit on your pile of cash, we will be out here fighting for our dignity, Martha continued. You've made your bed with fear, but we're here with hope. And hope is louder than any threat you can throw at us. The crowd erupted again, cheers ringing out that vibrated through the walls of the hall. Jack's heart swelled. This was more than just a fight for jobs, it was a fight for identity and self-worth. Richard's face twisted with anger. Hope won't pay your bills. Hope won't feed your kids. He spat, spitting venom in every word, but Jack saw a shift. The crack in Richard's facade was deepening. "Maybe," he shouted back, determined, "but it's hope that keeps us going. It's hope that whispers, you matter, and you're worth fighting for." A palpable tension hung in the air, each side bracing for the next move. Jack could see Richard's brow bead with sweat, and for the first time, he looked small under the weight of his own threats. But the challenge loomed larger, their defiance demanded a response, and Richard was not a man known for backing down easily. "Enough of this drama," Richard barked, his calm shredded. "If you think you can play this game of perseverance, you'll be the ones to lose. I'll reveal what happens next, and it won't be pretty." Jack's voice surged through the crowd once more. "We're not afraid, Richard. This is our time to fight back. You don't silence us anymore." But deep inside, wonder gripped Jack. How far would Richard go? Would he strike at their livelihoods, their families, out of vengeance? As Richard's grin returned, dark and knowing, Jack felt a chill creep down his spine. What would come next? Would sacrifice be required to protect this fledgling resistance? And as the murmurs swelled again, this time mixed with fear, Jack took a firm stance. It was clear they were on the brink of something profound, but the question loomed over them all: what price would they pay for their voices to be heard? The tension in the hall was electric. Jack scanned the crowd, searching for faces that reflected both fear and determination, but what stood out most was the change in Martha. Her defiance had sparked a fire across the room. Just as the crowd's energy surged, Richard stepped back, visibly rattled. He wiped his brow, his facade cracking under the pressure of their unity. And in that moment, Jack felt a wave of hope wash over him. Maybe, just maybe, they could fight back. "Martha," he said, his voice low yet strong, "your words have power. We need to share our stories. We need everyone to feel what we feel. We are not just workers, we are fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers." Martha nodded, emboldened. "Exactly. People need to understand our struggles. They need to hear why we cannot be silenced." The crowd murmured in agreement. Voices that had been timid began to rise. Jack encouraged more workers to step forward, to share what had pushed them to this point. Leonard, a soft-spoken mechanic, raised his hand. "I'll go," he said, his voice shaky as he approached the front, but strong enough to command attention. "My daughter asked me why I'm always so tired after work. I told her I'm just doing the best I can. But the truth is, I'm scared. I want to be there for her, to help her dream, but Richard's been taking too much from us." As he spoke, the crowd nodded, murmurs of understanding flooding through the hall. Jack could see Richard's expression morph from indifference to discomfort. "Every day, I wonder if I'll get laid off. If I lose my job, what will I tell her?" Leonard continued, his eyes brimming with tears. "I realized I can't just be afraid. Our families deserve better." More workers stepped up, sharing heart-wrenching stories of sacrifice, struggle, and quiet desperation, each weaving their own truths into a collective tapestry of resilience. There was Janet, whose son needed special medical care. Marco, a single father who juggled multiple jobs just to keep food on the table. One by one, they spoke of their battles, and with each revealed story, the spirit in the room grew stronger, but as the warmth of unity enveloped them, Richard's anger flared. "Enough!" he shouted, trying to regain control. "This isn't a sob story competition. You think you can win sympathy? What you need to realize is that the world runs on power. Those who have it dictate the rules." Jack felt a surge of courage rise within him. "And those who stand together can change those rules." He paced back and forth, engaging the crowd. "You heard Leonard. You heard Martha. We are not victims, we are fighters. If we join hands and push back, we can redefine what power means." A fierce roar erupted from the crowd, echoing off the walls, drowning out Richard's protests. It was a deafening reminder of their strength, yet, within Jack's heart, a shadow flickered. Richard had promised consequences. The crowd was rising, but the stakes were higher now. What might Richard do in response to this defiance? Would he retaliate? Just as thoughts clouded Jack's mind, Richard leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. You really think your voices can shake me? Watch what I can do next. In that moment, Jack felt a deep sense of dread settle in. How far would they go to intimidate him? Could he protect his fellow workers without putting them in danger? The crowd had transformed into a roaring tempest, unified but unaware of the storm that was brewing just beyond the horizon. And as Richard's sinister smile crept back, Jack had to wonder, would their newfound courage lead them to victory, or into a trap set by their enemy? The confrontation between fear and hope was about to reach a breaking point. Jack felt his heart race as Richard's laughter echoed through the hall, piercing through the cheers of solidarity that the crowd had created. It should have seemed absurd, but Richard's sneer carried an unsettling weight. Jack's instincts told him that darkness was brewing beneath the surface. How can you face us like this? Martha shouted, her voice cutting through the tension. You think your money makes you untouchable, but it doesn't matter if we don't have a voice. She stood tall, surrounded by the undulating sea of workers who were now emboldened, their collective strength palpable. Money can silence you when you don't know your worth. Richard fired back, his eyes darting from face to face as if he were sizing up his opponents. You think threatening me will put food on your tables? Your stories are worthless without action. His arrogance filled the air, but Jack could sense fear flickering in Richard's eyes. Maybe, just maybe, he was afraid of what they could unleash. Jack stepped forward, igniting the fire that had been simmering since Martha first spoke. We don't need your money. We need our dignity. You think your wealth protects you? You think power is all that matters? Each word felt like a drumbeat, resonating with everyone present. The fight isn't about money, it's about justice. And there's more of us than there are of you. Just then, an older woman rose from the back, her hands trembling but her spirit unbroken. When my husband worked this job, he did it with pride. He was proud to provide for our family, she began, her voice rising above the din. But your greed took that pride away. No one should have to fear that their work might not be enough. A powerful hush followed her words. The crowd hung on to her every syllable as if the room had collectively inhaled. Richard appeared taken aback, losing the assurance he held earlier. Jack saw the wheels turning in Richard's mind, the realization hitting him that he was no longer commanding the room, but rather losing control, and then came the moment no one saw coming. Listen, Jack called over the gathering murmurs, lifting his hands like a conductor in command of an orchestra. What if we took all these stories, all this pain, and turned it into something powerful? What if we share this with the world? Let them see the faces behind these struggles. What are you suggesting? Richard spat. Let us organize. Let us take this momentum and show everyone what we're fighting for. We need to channel our stories into change. We need to create a movement. Jack was met with nods and murmurs of approval. The energy flickered, pulses of hope darting through the room. We can't just leave it at this, Martha chimed in. If we stay silent, we accept defeat. But if we come together, no one can undermine us. Richard sneered again, attempting to regain some stability. You think the world will listen? They're too busy with their own lives to care about you. Maybe, Leonard shouted again, stepping forward, but who said we need to shout alone? We share our struggles, and together, we'll make our demands heard. No more silence. The hall erupted once more. The workers were now roaring with a passion that rattled the very walls. Jack felt the energy crackling all around him, each voice adding to a collective force, but in that fervor, Jack couldn't ignore the nagging worry at the back of his mind. Richard's power hadn't just come from his wealth, it had also come from a lifetime of manipulating the system. As the crowd rallied, Jack realized the danger they were in. If they pushed too hard, would Richard retaliate? What tactics would he resort to in order to squash their newly found strength? suddenly, as if to answer that question, a sharp noise echoed through the hall. A phone buzz, a scroll of a notification, perhaps. Everyone turned to see Richard pull out his phone and smirk. "And now," he said, satisfied, "let us see what your voices will really get you, because I've got plans of my own." The air thickened as anticipation hung heavy. All eyes were on Richard as Jack's heart raced. What would Richard unleash next? Would it end their fight before it could even begin? As the crowd collectively held its breath, the stakes had never seemed higher. Richard's fingers danced across the screen, a smug grin stretching across his face. The crowd's breath caught. Jack's heart thudded in his chest, anxiety twisting through him like a live wire. He glanced at Martha, whose expression mirrored his own mix of fear and determination. As Richard tapped away, he began to speak, his voice dripping with condescension. "You think you've created a movement? You think your voices can change anything? Let me show you what real power looks like." He turned his phone to face the crowd, and a sinister grin spread across his face. On the screen, a video began to play. Jack's heart dropped as he recognized familiar faces from the crowd, suddenly lit up in a montage of tired, defeated expressions, ranting against Richard and begging for fair treatment. Clips from past union meetings were edited together with a cruel spin, making their fight appear desperate and irrational. "This is what your movement looks like," Richard taunted, laughter escaping him like air from a balloon. "You think the world cares? This video is already trending. It will reshape your story into one of chaos and unrest." Gasps rippled through the hall. Anger boiled in Jack's veins as he surveyed the crowd. Martha's face paled, and a few people shifted uncomfortably. Doubt clouded some eyes, but the fire in others still burned brightly. This was a tactic meant to intimidate, and Richard knew it. It was low but effective. "And that's not all," Richard continued, leaning into his momentum. "I've already secured a meeting with your employers. They want to hear my side of the story, not yours. Let us see how far your feeble campaign gets when I turn your narrative against you." "No!" Leonard yelled, stepping forward defiantly. "You don't control us. This is our fight." "Really?" Richard replied, his eyes glinting with malice. "Your fight? It only takes one call to unravel this entire farce." Jack felt the ground beneath him tilt. This couldn't be the end, they had come too far. They needed a plan, a strategy. He stepped forward again, hands raised to regain focus among the trembling crowd. "We can't let him scare us," Jack shouted, feeling the passion rise within him. "What he showed us is just how desperate he is to manipulate our truth. He is afraid, and when someone is afraid, their tactics get messy. We need to control our story, reclaim it." The crowd stirred, eyes lighting up at his words, but Richard wasn't finished. "Reclaim? How do you propose to do that?" Richard's voice cut through. "With more empty promises. This charade will end, and you'll be left with nothing but regrets." A voice rose from somewhere in the back, trembling yet fierce. "Then we'll make sure it's not empty." It was the elderly woman from before, her determination rekindled. "We'll tell our truth with our own voices. We will get our stories out, not through his manipulation but from our hearts." A wave of agreement surged through the crowd. Jack could feel it, the energy shifting, becoming electric, igniting their spirits. "Let us form our own channels," Jack declared, energized by the ripple of hope that now spread, crashing into Richard's condescension. "Social media, community meetings, rally the people. We'll gather testimonials, share our experiences, and fight back the false narrative." Jack's voice grew steadier with each word, lifting the crowd with him. "Together, we are stronger. We will not back down, not this time." Richard's expression faltered briefly, but then he masked it beneath a facade of amusement. "Cute, but do you have the means to fight back? What you need is power, real power." As Richard's laughter echoed again, Jack's resolve only strengthened. They wouldn't he let him silence them. Not now. Not ever. But as Jack scanned the crowd, ready to spark the fire of change, he felt a chill creep up his spine. What if Richard's next move went beyond social media and manipulation? What if he unleashed something deeply personal and destructive? The hall silenced again. All eyes were on Jack, waiting for direction. As he looked out, courage surged through him, but lingering. Doubts hung in the air like fog. What risk did they face now, and would they stand strong in the eye of the storm? Before Jack could voice his next thought, Richard lifted his phone again, a smirk curling at the corners of his mouth. Let us see what happens when the truth hurts, because I have a little surprise that'll turn your sweet little fight upside down. A hush fell over the crowd as they waited for the worst. What surprise did Richard hold? And wouldn't it be too late for them to turn the tide? Richard's finger hovered over the screen, the room thick with tension. The crowd held its breath, caught between fear and defiance. Jack could feel the pulse of adrenaline in his veins, the ringing silence amplifying every heartbeat. What's it gonna be, Richard? Jack challenged, his voice steady despite the throbbing uncertainty. You don't scare us. We know why we're here. Richard smirked, reveling in the moment. Ah, but do you really know what you're up against? He pressed play, and the screen flickered to life once more. What appeared then was a series of raw, intimate clips. It was a recording of private conversations among Jack's peers, discussion of grievances, frustrations, and moments of vulnerability. Tears streamed down faces, voices quivered with fear of failure and betrayal. The snippets painted a picture of a community fractured, exposing their weaknesses in a way they had never intended for the world to see. Jack's stomach twisted. This wasn't just manipulation, it felt cruel and violating. The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. Look at them, Richard sneered, this is who you trust to lead you. These are the faces of your revolution, crumbling under pressure. But then, like a glimmering light cutting through the fog, Martha stepped forward. You may think you've broken us, Richard, but you're wrong. Her voice erupted with intensity, bolstered by an unexpected wave of strength. Those moments of honesty, they're not our failure. They're our humanity. They show what we're fighting for. As the crowd rallied around her, a shift began to take shape. Jack felt it, the defiance rebuilding like flame against the dark wind. Remember why we started this fight? Jack called out, his voice rising over the whispering crowd. We are here not to pretend we are perfect but to stand up for what we believe in. Richard's eyes narrowed, unequipped for the shift in energy. You really think that's enough? He mocked. Maybe you don't see it, but we do, Jack shot back, emboldened by the gathering resolve. You show us our weak moments, but we're stronger for them. Together, we rise like the ashes of what you've tried to burn down. The atmosphere crackled with newfound strength. One by one, voices rose up, echoing Martha's words, calling out their truths and vulnerabilities as badges of honor rather than shames. Richard's smirk faltered, a crack forming in his usual icy demeanor. It was as if he realized the crowd wasn't just witnessing their flaws, they were reclaiming their story, imbibing it with authenticity. Such theatrics. He retorted, though the impatience in his voice betrayed him. Genuine or not, you're still powerless without a plan. Determination surged in Jack. No more secret meetings. No more hidden agendas. We'll reclaim our narrative and expand it. We will bring the truth to the light ourselves. As the crowd erupted into cheers, Richard's laughter turned hollow, frustration palpable in the shifting tides around him. But just then, a woman in the front stepped forward, eyes wide with realization. Wait a minute, she said. Didn't Richard say he secured that meeting? Then he must have made contact with our employers. If that's true, a hush fell over the group, realization dawning like dawn breaking through night. The implications were staggering. What if he's playing both sides? Jack whispered, barely able to float the thought into the air. What if he is setting us up to fail from within? Unease cast a shadow over the crowd, the weight of suspicion creeping back in. Richard seized the moment, pressing his advantage. Ah, are you realizing how easily manipulated you really are? You think you're in control, but you're merely pawns in this game. Jack's heart raced. No, we can't let him turn us against each other. We have to find out what he is planning before it's too late. What lay ahead felt like dark waters filled with unseen dangers. Each tick of the clock echoed their urgency. Would they have the strength to stand united against Richard's schemes before the ground fell away beneath them? Jack looked into the faces of his comrades, searching for that glimmer of unity. This fight wasn't just about Richard. It was about every single person standing before him. They had to act quickly, and the choices weighed heavily. Are we ready to stand together now? Jack asked, his heart echoing hope and uncertainty. And in that moment, the question lingered, thick with possibility. Could they really navigate what Richard had planned, or would they find themselves scattered, alone in the storm he was brewing? The crowd breathed in unison, the weight of Jack's words lingering in the air like fog. Jack searched their faces. Some were uncertain, shoulders slumped under the strain of fear. But others glimmered with a fierce resolve, fists clenched and lips pressed together in determination. Martha stepped forward again, her voice steady. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about what we owe to everyone out there, to those who have suffered at the hands of Richard's arrogance. A murmur spread through the group, an electric sensation buzzing with possibility. Jack's heart lifted. She's right, we owe it to them to fight back, he said, feeling the tide turn around him. If Richard is playing both sides, creating chaos from within, we need to expose him. We need a plan. Richard stood still, watching, his features twisted in a mix of irritation and disbelief. What is this? A plan against me? You really think you can rally your meager strength against my empire? Jack took a breath, grounding himself in the moment. We are more than you think, Richard. We have each other. He gestured to the group, their eyes sparkling with defiance. We've already shown that we can rise from the ashes. So let us make a move that'll shake the foundation of your empire. Excited whispers spread through the crowd, contagious energy igniting a fire within. We'll reach out to the people. Someone shouted. We'll hold our own meetings, share our truth without fear. Others nodded enthusiastically, the weight of doubt beginning to lift. He could see Richard's frustration boiling beneath the surface. Supporters? You think they will rush to your aid when I have all the power? Richard's voice sounded shaky now, a crack in his facade. This wasn't just a battle of words, it was a battle for hearts and minds. We'll start with the people who feel the most crushed under your heavy hand, Jack exclaimed. We'll weave a network of people who want change, who felt pent-up anger and frustration and now see the strength in unity. But it takes strategy. Richard interjected sharply, trying to claw back the control he was losing. Then let us devise that strategy. Jack countered. And while we're at it, let us document every meeting, broadcast our truth so loud that even your voice can't drown us out. We rise together, and we won back down. Cheers erupted again, louder this time. Jack felt the swell of unity wrap around him, empowering him. People rallied, a wave of voices shouting words of hope, togetherness, and purpose drowning out Richard's offerings of despair, but just as hope swelled, a thick silence enveloped them as one of Jack's friends, Samuel, stepped forward looking pale, anxiety etched in every line on his face. What if Richard's right? What if we fail? What if he's already ruined us? The mood shifted abruptly. The cheering faltered, as doubt hung like a heavy cloud. Jack looked at Samuel, then back to the crowd, seeing the flickers of uncertainty spread. In every fight, there's fear. But that doesn't mean we should run from it. It means we face it, together, he urged. Even if we don't know what is coming. Even if it feels darker than ever. Someone in the back whispered, voice quaking. Especially then, Jack replied firmly, feeling the heat of determination burn within him again. Fear is the weapon of the oppressor, and if Richard thinks he can use it against us, then we're stronger when we face it head-on. As his words settled into the air, a collective breath filled the room, slowly gathering steam. But outside, shadows loomed ominously, indicating that a reckoning was drawing near. What other secrets might Richard hold? What dangers lay in wait just beyond their efforts? Jack's heart raced, fueled with urgency. They needed to move swiftly. Let us gather what we know, reach out to our supporters, and prepare for what's ahead. Jack called, feeling the collective heartbeat of the crowd syncing with his own, but as they started to plan, a chilling realization washed over him. What if Richard was already a step ahead? What if the storm they were trying to navigate was already set in motion? Time is slipping away, Jack thought, already worried about what move Richard might make next. The stakes had never been higher, and Jack felt the urgency thrumming through his veins. Gathering their thoughts, the crew moved toward a newfound determination, unified in purpose and resolve. Jack could see the worry still lingering in some faces, the subtle glances filled with doubt. But he also noticed the spark of hope igniting from the embers of their struggle. They had taken the first steps, and together, they had become a force Richard hadn't anticipated. Okay, everyone, Jack began, his voice steady, we need to lay this plan out clearly. We identify our strongest voices, contact the local media, and prepare statements that reflect our truth. This is our moment to turn the tide. Nods of agreement surged through the crowd. Each worker took a step closer, fists raised, hearts pounding in rhythm with Jack's words. In the corner, Ethan watched, eyes wide with admiration, and Jack felt warmth bloom in his chest. His son believed in him. Let us each gather a story, a testimony to why we fight. Share our struggles, make them personal, Jack said, lifting the spirits of his comrades. This isn't just about jobs, it's about our families, our community, our dignity. The words surged forth like water from a dam, rushing to energize the room. Voices intermingled, plans overlapping. Coordinating schedules, brainstorming hashtags, calling local organizations. They were no longer just a factory, they were a movement forged by shared experience and desire for change, but even as the lights of hope shone brightly in Jack's heart, a flicker of dread remained. He locked eyes with Richard, who stood at the edge of the assembly, frustration etched in every feature. Jack realized Richard wasn't just an enemy, he was also desperate. Listen up. Richard's voice cut through the excitement, dripping with disdain. You think your pity party will gain you anything? Your movement is a joke. Try as you might, you'll always be tools in my toolbox. That's where you're wrong, Richard. Jack countered, stepping forward. You underestimate us. Our strength isn't in your toolbox, it's in our resolve. It's in the heart of this community. The crowd erupted in cheers again, boldness charging the air. Jack felt powerful. Yes, Richard might have money and influence, but he lacked what they shared, a burning desire to reclaim their story. Suddenly, a voice shouted from the back, let us show him. We can create a presentation. Utilize social media to create an event featuring our stories, live for everyone to see. Enthusiasm swept through, sparking ideas and solidarity. Energy crackled like electricity, unity wrapped around them like a warm embrace. Let us flood every platform. Show what teamwork looks like. Martha added, rallying everyone's spirits. Let us gather every supporter out there. Let us show Richard what true power looks like when it stands together. Jack felt lighter, satisfaction blooming within. They were pushing back against the fears, they were refusing to be silenced. In the days that followed, the community rallied. Their stories burst forth, raw and real, spilling onto platforms that revealed their struggles and hopes, their humanity. Videos and testimonials shared with hashtags bonded together by one message, we will not be silenced. Reaction was swift and profound. The factory's former glory found its way back, drawing attention to the townsfolk's fights and dedication. Support poured in from neighboring towns, inspiring solidarity that spread like wildfire. Jack smiled, pride swelling as he watched Ethan grasping a small sign at the growing rally, his eyes shining with hope. This was more than just a protest. It was a movement, lanes of voices weaving together, transforming fear into courage and dreams into reality. Amid the excitement, Jack felt a shift in the air. The tide was turning. Richard was getting more agitated as he watched the momentum shift away from him. Calls began coming in support from local leaders, media buzzing about the raw, emotional journeys of the workers, testimonials from families thanking them for fighting back. But then came the morning that changed everything. A letter slid under Jack's door that it revealed the depths of Richard's schemes. He had sought to silence opponents through intimidation, but his efforts had not worked. The trust in Jack and his community had amplified their voices loud enough to drown out the chaos swirling around Richard's plans. They were winning. And as Jack stood in the sunlight letting that realization wash over him, he felt something even deeper. They had protected their families and would not take the threats lying down. They had ignited a flame of resilience in each other that would ensure their voices would always ring out stronger than any corporate greed. As the sun set that day, Jack gathered the community. Today, he began, voice resolute, we redefine what power really is. Cheers erupted. Power is not wielding control over others, it's lifting each other up, fighting for community, for family, for our future. Ethan cheered alongside the others, his small voice harmonized with the collective roar. Jack felt overwhelmed with emotion. In this moment, they weren't merely workers, they were family bound by love, grit, and determination, and as the rally spread, Jack knew deep within his heart they had already won a battle against Richard. Regardless of what happened next, they were now an unstoppable force moving forward, hand in hand, never again underestimating their strength. But before they could celebrate their victory fully, a message dropped on Jack's phone, one of Richard's last desperate attempts to regain power. Jack's lips curled into a smile as he looked out against the horizon. They would not back down. This is where their journey truly began. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep the positivity going. Comment your reactions and feelings about this inspiring conclusion below. Don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation, because only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Let us keep the fight alive.